Hello, everybody. I think you can hear me. Welcome to our TSR Answers Results and Clearing Special. I'm Joe Woodcock, Community Manager for Study Help here at the Student Room. And today we are going through every question you have for results and clearing, which is next week, can you believe? I'm sure you guys are more than aware. We've seen loads of questions around grading specifically and what to do if you don't get your uni place. So we've brought together Richard from Ofqual and Courtney from UCAS to talk through all your questions we'll be asking. It will be a nice quick Q&A style session today because we have lots to get through. So first of all, would it be okay if I introduce Richard quickly, if you can give us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll go to Courtney after.
Thanks, Joe, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Garrett. I'm Director of Policy and Strategic Relations at Ofqual, which means I've got oversight for the requirements that we set for GCSEs, AS and A-levels.
Thank you very much. And Courtney?
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Courtney Shepherd. I'm the Senior Customer Experience Manager for students at UCAS. My role involves making sure that all of you have got the support and guidance that you need, whether it's right at the start of filling in your application or perhaps going through clearing and that sort of thing. And I manage the team on the phones as well. So if you do need to get in touch with us, hopefully the guys will give you everything you need.
Thank you so much. So the idea for today's session is for everyone watching to come away with the knowledge that they'll need to make a success of results day, no matter what happens. We've got a load of questions here from our audience, but we're also taking live questions. So if you have a burning question that you want asked, whack it in the thread and hopefully we'll be able to get to a couple of them. So the first question for you, Richard, it is, why are high achieving students at low attainment colleges being downgraded to fit the curve instead of using a student's prior exam results? Now, I suppose what would be really useful here, Richard, is for you to give an outline of maybe the factors and the weighting that will be used in standardisation model this year, and then you can maybe speak to if it is going to disadvantage high achieving students at low attainment schools. Would that be possible?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joe, and thanks very much for giving me the opportunity. So I think the first thing to say is that standardisation is a really important part of the approach that's in place this year. It's important to align because it aligns standards across different schools and colleges, and it ensures comparability of this year's results with those in previous years and those that we'll see in future years. So to talk about the standardisation model itself really briefly, and there is lots more information on our website. But the way the standardisation model works is by considering each school or college individually, comparing the centre assessed grades that the school's teachers have submitted to the school or college's historical results and the prior attainment of its students. So what that means is that if the evidence shows that the group of students at that school and college this year are a little stronger or a little weaker than previously, then that's going to be reflected in the way the model works for that school or college. And then in terms of the impact it has on the centre assessment grades that were submitted by the schools and colleges, where it appears that the grading judgments in some schools or colleges were more severe or more generous than others, then the exam boards will adjust the grades of the students affected upwards or downwards using the teacher's rank order information, which has also been supplied, to make sure that no one is unfairly advantaged or disadvantaged. And I think it's really important just to say a bit about why that needs to be done. So it's necessary to make sure that there's a level playing field, that the standard across different schools and colleges is brought into line. Because the key thing about this year, I suppose, is that circumstances meant that there was no opportunity to develop a common approach across different schools and colleges, to train all the teachers that will be undertaking it, for example, to undertake kind of post hoc checks of what's been done. And so it's therefore necessary to do this at this stage to make sure that everybody's in line and that there's a level playing field. And therefore it is likely that when we're talking about this, that all centres will see some adjustments to their grades. But one of the important things is there's a sense, I think, in some of the commentary that there'll be some kind of blanket adjustments that will be imposed, and that's not the case. So adjustments are going to be precisely determined for each subject in each school and college, and be based on the evidence in the way that I described. And it might be worth just sort of being really clear here as well, that the statistical model that we've used has been rigorously tested. We tested 12 different models, and we went for the model, obviously, that we think will give us the most accurate results. So it's certainly something that there's been a lot of thought given to. So I think what I would emphasise is that the final thing I would sort of emphasise at this stage is that we've been able to review an early review of the data, and what that tells us is that the majority of the grades that students receive will be the centre assessment grade. The vast majority, almost all, will be the same as the centre assessment grade or within one grade. And so the results that come out on results day not only will be in line with the results that we've seen in previous years, but they'll also be broadly in line with what schools and colleges expected.
Thank you so much for that, Richard. There is one other question for you before I move over to the university side really quickly, and it is just about those centre assessed grades. I understand that maybe an exact number might be a little bit difficult, but we have a student here who asks, what percentage of students will have their centre assessed grades, so the grades given by their teacher, lowered by more than one grade? Would you be able to give us a rough idea of that at all?
So I can't at this stage give precise numbers ahead of results day, but that's the sort of information that certainly will be available on results day. That will all be released on results day. What I can say is that, as I said, that the majority of students will receive the same as a centre assessment grade. Almost all of them will be within one grade, and that therefore results will be broadly in line with census expectations. I suppose what I could say as well, though, I could talk a bit about what we expect to see year on year. So what I think it's really important to stress is that overall results this year will be in line with the results that we've seen in previous years. But in determining the model, there were various decisions we had to take about precisely the way it was designed. And where we had a decision to take, then we thought that the only fair thing to do would be to make decisions that operate in students' favour, where we've got a decision to take about whether or not we should do one thing or the other. So to give you a sort of concrete example, for those students who study in the largest schools, the largest colleges, for example, where you were doing GCSE English and Maths, for those subjects, students were placed together in groups of 10. So the rank order, because those schools were often maybe doing up to 1,000 students, they felt that it wasn't possible for them to rank them precisely, so they were placed in groups of 10. And in those instances, we thought it would be unfair to, for example, cut off halfway through one of those rankings, or to round up and assume that that all of the 10, where the model would suggest perhaps the cutoff should fall in the middle of a group of 10, that some of those students should get it, or that none of those students should get it. So all of those students. And there's a number of decisions we've taken along those lines. And the reason I highlight that is that what it does mean is that when we look at results this year, we expect that they will be slightly higher than last year, probably 1 or 2 percentage points. And so it is important to be clear that when we're thinking about, and when students are worried about, so there's a general concern about downgrading, we're talking at a national level of results that are not lower. In fact, they're actually slightly higher.
Thank you so much, Richard. It's just worth mentioning at this stage as well, because I know you guys have some really good resources for students to clarify that standardisation process as well, that anything referenced here we'll put in the thread afterwards, and any questions that we don't get to, we'll make sure someone at TSR is answering them as well. But now, Courtney, we've had you quiet for far too long, so nice easy one for you to start off with. What happens if universities aren't flexible this year? And do you think there's going to be a lot of competition in clearing? So I suppose if you could give us a rough idea of what you expect to see from this clearing compared to maybe the years previous, that would be a really good starting point for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a tough year for all of you guys, with not sitting the exams and lots of uncertainty there. And then also for the universities themselves, they will have had to make sure that their teaching provision for next year is catered for. And when they're looking at all of those grades that are going to start coming through and have been coming through over the last few weeks, they'll need to look at as many different factors as possible and be as flexible as they can when considering offers and making offers to you. So I think this year we'll find it's going to be busy in clearing, and it always is. Last year we saw that there were 73,000, just over 73,000 people who secured their place through clearing, which is an awful lot of people. And many of you will have changed your mind from your original firm and insurance choice. And you can do that, you can release yourself into clearing and you can choose somewhere else. And it might actually be somewhere where you've thought about and you can apply to now that was different to when you first submitted your UCAS application. So I think this year it is going to be busy. We've been supporting all of you, as have the guys on TSR over the last few months. Lots of anxious queries and questions about what if this, what if that scenario. So we'll see what it plays out like on results day. But I think it will be busy. There are going to be around 35,000 courses available in clearing. Well, that's a lot of choice, a lot of choice. So if you don't get the grades that you were hoping for, or if you didn't get into your chosen uni, or indeed if you've changed your mind, there are lots of options available for you. UCAS website has got all of those up-to-date clearing vacancies now. You can start having a look, do a bit of research ahead of time maybe if you're a little worried. Write down the names of the top 2 or 3 choices that you want to go to and their phone numbers. So when you log into track on that morning and if things aren't what you wanted, you've got a head start. You can give those unis a ring. But yeah, there's going to be lots of courses available. It will be quite competitive, it always is. But in terms of the broad picture, what this looks like compared to previous years, I think it's a good time to apply. Let's put it that way. For you students who are wanting to secure a place, an undergraduate place, it is a good time to apply.
Thank you so much. I've got another question for you. And as you can imagine, at this time of year, a week before results day, a lot of the questions are playing up to the anxiety that students don't get the grades they need or don't get the university place that they want. So the next question for you, Courtney, is, can I call my firm choice uni and ask them to reconsider if I have contextual evidence but miss my grades? And specifically, do we know if the centre assessed grades could be used as contextual evidence when they're calling the university up if they initially have lost their place?
So I think the first thing for students to do is to keep an eye on track and have a look at the feedback that they might have received if they didn't get into their chosen place. There might be reasons that the university give for making you unsuccessful. So have that in mind first. In terms of speaking to that firm choice, if there's any additional contextual information to share, then as we've said, the universities will be as flexible as they can. They'll still have their entry requirements though. So it's definitely worth a call. You can talk to them, share the relevant information that you have. It would also be worth speaking to your teacher and your advisor if you are wanting to use that centre assessed grade as additional information for the university, and find out how best to frame that. But it is definitely worth speaking to the uni for sure. They'll be looking at their numbers and seeing whether they could potentially offer you a slightly different course to the one that you'd initially applied to. It might actually be one that you might enjoy better, you never know. But it's certainly worth giving the uni a call and talking that through.
Okay, thank you so much. And it is definitely worth reiterating for any student that may want to use those centre assessed grades on results day. Talk to your schools as soon as possible.
We can't hear you, Joe.
Can you not?
Can
you hear me now? Oh my God, how embarrassing. Just saying that on results day, make sure you talk to your schools and talk to them as soon as you get your grades so you can get those centre assessed grades and use that information if you need to. Going back to you, Richard, if students don't get the grades they need, I want to ask about the appeals process. Obviously, that will be on students' minds quite a lot at the moment. Would you be able to detail the appeals process and why there's no individual right of appeal against calculated grades? And if that's the case, what is the best option for students who feel disadvantaged or unfairly done by the grading system this year?
Sure. So I think the first thing to say is that what students can do is they can ask the school or college to check whether or not they made any kind of error in submitting the central assessment grade or the position in the rank order. And then if it transpires they did, then to submit an appeal to the exam board. Other than that, then the process is focused on appeals by schools and colleges. Now, schools and colleges might appeal if they think something's gone wrong in the processing of results. They might look at it, they might realise that they made a mistake themselves. There's a lot of data being submitted in a small space of time. It's likely to be rare, but it is possible with 5 million pieces of data going from schools and colleges to exam boards that something's gone wrong somewhere. They could challenge and spot something that they think the exam board's done wrong. But they can also appeal if they think that there's evidence that grades are lower than expected because the previous cohorts are not sufficiently representative of this year's students. So for example, and there's a range of things, and I won't go through them all in the interest of time, but an example could be that there's some kind of really significant problematic event that's happened in the past. Maybe there was a flooding or a fire, it's caused the school to have to be relocated, which affected one of those years of historical results. There could be something very strange that they want to present about the ability profile of students, where they're expecting a very different pattern of grades to results in previous years. That they feel that the grades of students that were of particularly high or perhaps lower ability were unduly affected by the model. And if they think that's the case, then a school or college can make an appeal, and of course that could then feed through into an individual student's grade. So what you can't do is you can't appeal your grade because you don't agree with the central assessment grade or the rank order position submitted by your school and college. And the reason for that is that we essentially, these have been really carefully considered by schools and colleges, and any appeal would have to be undertaken by someone better placed than the school, than any students' teachers to judge how they would have done if exams had taken place. And in the particular circumstances of this year, we just don't think that there is any such person. But of course, what you might want to do is speak to your school and college in relation to any of the things that I've just talked about. If you feel that that could have affected, those sorts of circumstances could have affected you, and understand if the school or college is thinking of putting forward an appeal in a particular subject or in more than one subject in relation to those issues. Because they might seek to do so, not just because they think all of their students have been affected, but they might also seek to make an appeal that a particular subset of their students have been affected. The only other thing I wanted to say is, distinct from appeals, we do recognise and take seriously concerns about the risks of bias in judgments used this summer. Now, our initial analysis suggests that at a national level, there's not going to be any widening of the gaps in attainments between different groups of students, so that concerns that there's been widespread kind of systematic impact across the system of bias this year, those haven't been borne out. But it's still likely that at an individual level, there might be individual students who wish to make a complaint about bias or discrimination. And we're committed to making that process as straightforward as possible. So we have published a range of material on our website that details what a student would need to do if they wanted to pursue this. So what I would suggest is there's a range of material on our website, explains both appeals and any complaint a student might want to make about bias and discrimination. Key point on appeals is that will need to be through the school and college, but of course, an appeal through a school and college, may well then come through and have an impact on an individual student. Slightly different if your concern is about bias and discrimination, but there's clear information about what you'd need to do if you were concerned that you were in that position. And all of that stuff's on our website, and I'm sure, Joe, we can make sure that's made available to people.
Yes, of course we can. We'll make sure we publish that afterwards. You've touched on it already, Courtney, a little bit, but our next question is for you. This was pre-planned, but we've had a fair few live questions in specifically. So how can I give myself the best chance of getting a place if I'm in clearing this year? Specifically as well, we've had a live question from Hans YW1 asking about medicine, and if they don't know if they've got the grades to get their medicine place or not, what do they do in clearing to give themselves the best chance?
Okay, that is a fantastic question, and you've got time, I think, is the first thing to take into account. So you've got from now until when you actually receive your results. So you can go and look on the university's websites individually. You can have a look on the UCAS website. You can have a look at wherever there are vacancies listed for clearing. The UCAS site has got the most up-to-date information. But what I would suggest you do is, if you're worried about not meeting the grades that you need for your place, and you're worried about what happens on results day, make that short list, 2, 3, maybe 4 different universities, write down what their clearing hotline number is, have a look on their website to see what their normal entry requirements are. Those entry requirements will be flexible, and particularly over clearing, they might actually increase if there's real high demand for that course. But more often than not, the universities will be flexible in what those entry requirements are, and may not be as rigid to the letter as they are on their website. So it's always worth having a think about the ones which you might have a go at. So you write those all down, and then when you log into track on Thursday morning, if you find yourself in clearing, then you can get on the phone and you can start the ball rolling really quickly. When you do pick up the phone and you speak to the uni, treat that conversation like a mini interview. So brush up on your personal statement, remember what you wrote within that personal statement. Think about why it is that you want to study that particular subject. Why do you want to go to that uni? And then also, it's always worth including, what are your ambitions to get from that course? So it could be a particular career, it could be a real passion of yours to further your learning. Whatever that looks like, keep that in your mind and have maybe a checklist of a few things that you want to talk about to the uni when you get onto the phone with them for that clearing phone call. So there's a few things that you can do there. You might also find that if you are unplaced, and when you log into track and you find that you are in clearing, you'll see your clearing number and all of that, but you'll also see a new feature on track that says view matches. So that's quite new, and that's something called Clearing Plus. And then you'll have a personalized list of courses which are matched to you. You can have a look through and start your thinking process. And there might be some courses which you didn't think about, and you might be like, oh wow, cool, I didn't realize I could apply to that course. Or there may be ones which are on your shortlist already, and that's great. You can click on an option that says express interest for the course, and that will send your details on to the uni straight away. So they might call you back, but if indeed you give them a ring, they've already got your details, they know that you're interested in the course, and it can fast track that conversation. So keep an eye out for those. So the other question, Joe, was around if students are worried about not meeting the requirements for studying medicine. Now, medicine courses are always very competitive every year. This year is going to be no different to that. So again, similar sort of advice, have a look at the different universities around that you might be interested in. You can get ready to call your firm choice, call them back, if they didn't give you an offer. You can call them on the day and see if the situation has changed, they might still offer you a place. You may want to take your exams in the autumn, which will mean that you might have a chance to bump up those grades. And you might be wondering, can I start uni this year, or do I have to wait for 2021? And the answer is it's possible for both, to be honest. It does depend on each individual university and what they would advise you to do. So if there are January or February start dates for the course, then you may well be able to do that if you meet the conditions that the university want you to get. Otherwise, you can apply for entry to start in 2021. But if indeed you just want to better your grades and take those exams and start uni, it is possible, but I would think long and hard about how much stress that will put you under, and whether it is something that you desperately need to do or you want to do, because you'll be contending with starting uni, still studying for some exams which you may not have had the support from your school or college for a while. So it's quite a lot of stress. So think through that quite carefully.
Must be a mind reader, Courtney. I think you've answered about 4 or 5 of our live questions without even seeing it.
Need to speak up again, Joe, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Bang up a little bit, sorry about that. I was saying you must be a mind reader. You managed to answer 4 or 5 of our live questions without me even giving them to you. Just one that we did get in live, you mentioned about the personal statements. We have a student here who hasn't got a personal statement or a reference, as they were planning on taking a gap year, but now they may see if they can go through clearing. How does that process work? And also, obviously, they haven't gone through student finance either. Would you be able to speak on that a little bit, what they should be doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And there will be lots of you who perhaps were thinking about going on a gap year. Maybe you were thinking about some other plans other than university, so you haven't done a UCAS application yet. So that's not to worry. You can start that now. You can fill in all of your details, get your personal statement sorted, get your reference sorted. You can do that right now on the UCAS website. What that will mean is come results day, you'll have your clearing number, your personal ID number, your personal statement, etc., all within your application. So when you give the uni a call about potentially getting a clear in place, you just give them those numbers and they'll be able to look up all of your information. You can apply now, you can do that on the day if you want to as well. So there are options to do that, and it's certainly not too late to apply.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? I think you can. We'll move on. I want to ask a couple of slightly more specific questions to you, Richard. The first one is about slightly smaller cohort sizes. We have a question from a student who's the only candidate for a specific subject at his centre. Will Ofqual place more weighting on the centre assessed grades in these circumstances? We had another question come in about what is classified as a small cohort. So I just wondered if you could maybe talk around the subject a little bit.
Yes.
And the final thing to mention is, will there be more room for appeals if you're part of a small cohort, if you felt that maybe went against you, against your favour?
Yeah, okay. So I think what I can't do at this stage is can't talk about the precise numbers, because that's detail that will be released in results day. But what I can say is that the standardisation process will be sensitive to the fact that centres with smaller entries, because of their overall size, or it might just be that they've got a small cohort for that subject, usually see more year-on-year variation than larger centres. We can't place as much weight on those statistics. So centres with smaller entries will have greater weight placed on the centre assessment grades when calculating results. And the way it will work is that the process will use a kind of a sliding scale to adjust the weighting given to the centre assessment grade or statistical evidence, depending on the number of students taking a subject in a centre. So obviously what I can't do is give precise details about that today. And that's because if we give early publication of the information, it could lead some people to unfairly find out their results ahead of results day, or it could lead to some unhelpful anxiety ahead of results day. But in terms of if you're the only student, then clearly that's the smallest possible cohort, if you like, and therefore the greatest weight would be placed on centre assessment grades. It does follow. So I think, does that address the questions, Joe?
I think it does, yeah. I think you've covered absolutely everything. I do have 1 or 2 other very specific situations, but I do think they cover a fair amount of students. I don't actually know if you're the best place to answer this, but we will give it a go. Do you know if there was going to be an adjustment to the early application deadlines on the 15th of October for Oxbridge and Medicine to consider students who maybe have missed their grades and want to reapply by sitting the autumn exams? Obviously, you'll have, in a student's position, trying to enter for medicine, which is very competitive, a very difficult task, while also having a very short turnaround from results day to the start of their A-levels. The workload, obviously, revising and reapplying could burden students. Do you know if there's going to be any flexibility in those applications at all?
So I might let Courtney pick up on that, but it might be helpful just to confirm what those timescales look like and how they relate, and then perhaps let Courtney pick up on the implications of that for applications to particular courses. So any student at all who believes their calculated grade doesn't reflect their performance will have the opportunity to take exams in the autumn. And that opportunity will also be available to any student who wasn't able to receive a calculated grade, perhaps because they were perhaps a private candidate, for example, and the school or college with which they planned to take the exams didn't know enough about them and their likely performance in the exam in order to submit a result. So anybody who did receive a calculated grade this summer, or who was going to take an exam and then was unable to do so, can take exams in the autumn. So just to be really clear on that, the timetable is that they'll begin on Monday the 5th of October, and they'll finish on Friday the 23rd of October. And the entry deadlines, so the time when you've got to decide if you're going to take an autumn exam for the AS and the A levels is the 4th of September. The results will be out just before Christmas, so they'll be out late December, and all of the format of them, all of them will be exam only. The challenges of trying to administer the non-exam assessment when some students had started it and finished it, some hadn't. The challenges in relation to some of the social distancing requirements in schools and all those sorts of things meant that we decided the fairest thing is that they will be based on exam only, with the one exception of art and design, which is entirely assessed through non-exam assessment, and there's slightly different arrangements in that subject. So that's the kind of facts about the autumn. In terms of how universities will then treat those results, I think probably Courtney's best place to comment on what's likely to happen there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Richard. So there will be a lot of you who are thinking perhaps about applying again. So looking at that next year's entry for September, October 2021. At the moment, the deadline for medicine courses, veterinary courses, dentistry courses, and for Oxford and Cambridge will still be October 15th. It's under review all of the time, of course it is, but at the moment that's going to stay. So I think if you are anxious about not being able to meet the entry point for this September or October, for whatever reason, it doesn't necessarily have to be because you're writing those exams in the autumn. You can look at alternative start dates, so whether the course begins in January or February perhaps, or sometimes courses even start in March. There will be options for you to start a bit earlier than having to wait for the whole year. But in these instances, my first piece of advice to you would be to get in touch with that uni, first of all. Talk to them about your situation, what you want to do, where your concerns are, and they'll be able to advise you as to how flexible or not that they will be when considering that. But for now, that October 15th date to submit your application for those courses is still going to stay.
Thank you so much to both of you there. We've had a few live questions come in for private candidates, homeschool candidates, resit candidates. If private candidate students are predicted higher than the grade they previously got, will they be standardised too? So I suppose the question that's coming in, the theme is, how does the standardisation model work for private candidates or candidates that aren't sitting their first lot of A levels? Does it differ at all?
So I think the important thing is that it's important that there's a level playing field across the piece, wherever a student, whatever the particular mode of learning that a student has undertaken. And so it's the case that the results of somebody who was resitting, for example, and might have been expecting to improve their results, or somebody who was a private candidate who wasn't actually studying at that school or college, it is important that their results are able to be standardised, just like everybody else's, in order to make sure that if that school or college is a little bit more lenient or a little bit more generous in the judgments that they're making, those adjustments are made in order to bring their results, the results of that school or college into line with the results of the results nationally. So I think that I guess the key point to make is, yes, those results will be standardised. There are some technical things there, so it's important that there's no assumption, for example, built into the model that somebody who's resitting would be expected to get the same result. So when we talk about a level playing field, if, for example, somebody's resitting and they've done a lot of work and they've really improved their performance this year, then if that's reflected in the grade that the school and college has submitted and reflected in the grade that the teacher's given, then there's then that will be that along with the kind of standardization that takes place at that school or college will be the key determinant of the result they receive. There's nothing in the design of the model that would assume that, for example, they should get the same grade as they got previously or anything like that.
Thank you so much. We're really running out of time. There's so much to get through. I wonder, for the last question, if I could go to you, Courtney. You mentioned it previously. We've had a few questions on it. Would you be able to give us, say, 2 minutes max on what is Clearing Plus and the changes that students may expect to see with Clearing Plus?
Absolutely. So I'm glad you've asked that question. Clearing Plus is new this year. And what we know is that when you find yourself in clearing and you're told, it's okay, there are 35,000 courses for you to choose from, go have a look. That's quite daunting in itself, although there's lots of opportunity there. The idea behind Clearing Plus was to use your achieved qualifications, the information that UCAS has, that information about the original choices that you had, match those against entry requirements that universities decide. So it could be whatever their sort of A-level grades or BTEC grades are, etc. And then some other criteria as to whether or not the university wants to put those particular courses into Clearing Plus over and above the normal clearing vacancies which you can use. So what that means is when you find yourself as unplaced and you log into track and you haven't got your place and you're in clearing, you'll see a list of these courses which are personalized to you based on your situation, your achieved grades, and how you match to the universities who have placed their courses in Clearing Plus. And it gives you an opportunity to think through some options and fast track some options as well for you. So you can express an interest in those courses. Your details are sent to the uni straight away, and they might well get in touch with you via phone or email and then have a chat to you and give you a clearing offer. But like I said earlier, if you also contact them anyway, you'll be ahead of the game because they'll have your details. So Clearing Plus is an additional route for you to do some research and to see some opportunities. I wouldn't place everything on the matches that you see. Try and use normal clearing as well. So do your own research and call the unis proactively. But it's an additional tool to allow you to do some research.
Thank you so much. And with that, I think, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you both to Courtney and Richard, who took the time out today to speak to us. I really hope that it's been useful to students. Thank you for everyone that submitted their questions. I think we got through a lot of them, but there might be one or two stragglers. So what we'll do, we'll go in and try and answer as many as we can. We'll make sure we signpost users to all the resources that have been mentioned and will be useful. And the last thing to say is that the second part of our TSR Answers Results and Clearing specials will take place next Wednesday, the 12th, and the day before results day, and it will offer support, advice and guidance. Courtney will be joining us again, and we'll have representatives from Student Support Services of the University of East Anglia and the National Career Service. So hopefully, if you found today useful, jump on then and we'll be able to answer a couple more questions. And that's it for today. Thank you so much to both of you for having us, and have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you so much. Bye.